9 against the 9.
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 9 against the 9,
9 against the 9.
a podcast about Lord of the Rings.
All right. We're here at episode 8 of 9 against the 9.
It's 9 against the 9, y'all.
That's right. And we're doing a Middle-earth Miscellany or Miscellany. We had this conversation. I don't know if it... Do you remember having this conversation?
Yes.
I don't know if it kept... If it was retained in the released audio.
I don't remember if it was recorded.
Yeah. But anyways, you say Miscellany.
Miscellany.
And I think I say Miscellany, although I haven't heard the word said out loud, maybe ever, until we were having that conversation. I looked it up. And
Both are acceptable.
Yeah, both are acceptable. And Miscellany is British and Miscellany is American, according to probably Oxford Online. That's wacky.
Okay.
You got any thoughts on that?
No.
We've also referred to this episode as the Stash Box episode.
So these are all the things that we didn't just like get an episode unto themselves, but we think are noteworthy. These are sort of like the honorable mentions.
Yeah, outlier creatures, events, geographies. I have some geographical, at least one geographical concern.
I have no idea what I have.
Yeah. This episode is going to be a little different because you're going to hear our interlude music probably 10 times because I don't have quotes really right now, but I know that this stuff is there. And given the way I want to present the format, I think we can just check every time.
So we've done, for the format of this episode and probably the next one, we're like the format of all 9 episodes. We may have hit the climax, resolution, whatever, the rising action, and it's crested at supremacy, and now we're kind of riding that curve down to come to it's a resolution to then have a conclusion in episode 9.
Maybe. I'm not sure supremacy was the climax of the whole season. That's interesting. It was a thematic.
Rising action, heavy hitting episode.
It was a thematic. There was thematic thickness.
2 hours and 2 hours plus.
Yep, but we got 10 separate topics for you today. Because I want to do the top 10 miscellaneous things that we haven't talked about on 9 Against the 9. And I've ranked them. I've ranked them according to how weird or, how just, I don't know, what word am I looking for these things? I'll give an example of one that I think in episode 1, when we were describing what these episodes might look like, you said, the thing that the Nazgul ride. Like, what's the deal with that thing? Is it weird? Is it irregular for Middle Earth? Is it a mystery?
Maybe. I don't know. Is it?
I think
it exists.
There's a word
there
I'm looking
is.
for. What's the word that... they're enigmatic. There's some enigmatic things about Middle Earth.
And these are your top 10. We haven't talked about things that... You have not told me what your top 10 are. You've not told me your 10 things.
It's a surprise.
I have not come up with 10 things.
Yeah, but I've been pushing you to come up with 10 things, and you said...
there's some things there.
How many did you come up with?
I left my list at school.
Yeah, but if you had to guess how many you came up with.
5.
All right.
6.
Yeah,
4.
and we'll see if
7. 3.
all the Fibonacci numbers. We'll see if the 10 that I came up with are the same as the 10 that Clark came up with.
And we're going to do this in a way where you're going to say, all right, the next one.
Yeah, number 10.
So we're going to do a countdown, and then we're going to do your countdown, and if there's anything that I wanted to talk about that you didn't have on your list. Tough?
Can you say it again? I was looking at my notes.
So you're not even listening?
Well, don't have note envy. Just
So if we get through your top 10 and there's something that I wanted to talk about, but it didn't make your list.
Then we'll do it, even though it might not be
okay.
as grandiosely enigmatic as the number 1. Which
Great.
I'm not even sure which one it is. But I'm about to look. You got any corrections?
I do want to talk about one thing that I don't think I mentioned from the Supremacy episode. And I might have had a note, maybe I mentioned it, but maybe later on it struck me again. And it's Aragorn as he's king.
This is from this. You're referring to supremacy.
Supremacy
as a topic.
Yes, from the last episode. So Aragorn and supremacy. So he's king, and there are two things where he maintains control. He's like, nope, I'm in charge. You're subject to me. The first one is Faramir as steward goes to him and he says, I want to like relinquish my stewardship. I want to be free of like this. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm out. And Aragorn's like, no, you're not. You're still steward forever, for life. That's your family. You're stuck. I will let you go to Theoden and like do your own thing. So like I'll give you a plantation or whatever, and you can be in charge. You can live a nice, enjoyable life, but you are subject to me.
What's interesting about that, not to get into episode 7 again, is that Faramir, Aragorn says to Faramir, you can like leave the city, but you have to be in name the steward still.
Right.
So that's like he can become a like what's it called, a landlord who's not there. There's a term, a landlord who doesn't take care of the property and is like living in a state far away or whatever. Absentee landlord. He can be like an absentee landlord. He can like live somewhere else, and there's people that probably could run the city that they won't, because they're like, well, Faramir is technically in charge, but he's like not even on the scene. He has to be accountable to Aragorn.
Yeah.
But the people of Minas Tirith don't even get to decide who should run the city. He doesn't even have to be there, because Aragorn insists his title is more important than his function. He's not even insisting that he function. He's just insisting that he be in the White Dude Club or whatever.
It's like, yeah, if I call on you, you have to be there.
Yeah, sure.
Sort of like the whole like Paths of the Dead thing, where he was like, we have to call on you, and they're like, we don't want to do that, and they're like, well, now you're cursed and you're gonna have unrest for hundreds of years.
Telling me you should bring up the Paths of the Dead today, because that's one of the top 10 enigmatic, miscellaneous things about Middle Earth that we haven't discussed in 9 Against the 9 too much.
Cool. So the other thing about Aragorn and not letting go, Pippin is like gave his service to Denethor, the steward, and Denethor, before his whole like shambles and like unraveling, said, you know what, Pippin, I release you. Go die wherever you see fit. Like, we're all dead. I release you of your vow and your responsibilities. Go die somewhere. And Aragorn at one point came to Pippin and said, I do not release you of your service to Gondor. You are still whatever, like you're still beholden to Gondor, and if I call upon you, you must answer. And I was like, motherfucker, first of all, Pippin didn't offer his service to you. He offered it to Denethor. Second of all, he was released from it.
Yeah.
So you have no bearing. You have in no way, in no capacity do you have any control over Pippin, yet you've just exerted yourself.
Big bank take little bank. Right?
And that seems very like that's colonialism.
Supreme. Yeah, and it's also a pyramid, sort of like a pyramid structure hierarchy where Aragorn at the top can override the authority of any of the things in the next tier down, and the people at the bottom ultimately are answerable to him, regardless of what their supervisor says.
It's messed up.
Yeah, it's messed up. I was going to correct just quickly. I was referring to Orientalism, and I think that I said it was an attempt that the West was attempting to define itself in contradistinction to the East. And having read more of Said's book, I mean, I think it's that the West is trying to define the East. Everything else is sound about the way we talked about Orientalism. Generalizations, that all makes sense. That's all. But I think the West is defining the Orient in Orientalism. Although, that's a minor point. It's so minor I might cut it. You ready to get into this?
Your top 10. Yours. All right, the top 10. Top 10 things.
Well, you don't have to get into the top 10 formula, but You ready to talk about miscellaneous stuff
Sure.
from Middle Earth?
Sure. Well, this is going to be more of a going off the cuff kind of thing, less prepared, more grassrootsy, reactionary,
Politically reactionary episode. No, I think that the format is that we're gonna have to look stuff up. But
mention something, do an initial reaction,
yes.
pause, look things up,
Exactly.
come back to it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. We've already covered a couple things that I think would be on a top 10, so I'm just gonna shout them out quickly. One, the Ents, they keep coming up, and they're a weird thing in Middle Earth, but they're not. I mean, they're given whole chapters, so they're kind of mainstream topic. And then the other one is the Blue Wizards, which I feel like you said you wanted to get back at that.
At one point I did, and we didn't get to it, so we'll probably expect non-closure with that one. But you said you had already discussed your Blue Wizard theory, the Blue Wizards may have like gone out east to find the people out there, and the people were like, well, Sauron's kind of our people's champion because it's against he's the only one fighting against this.
Yeah, they went native or whatever.
Right.
Kind of
so they're like, oh, we see it. Yeah, okay, we see it your way.
Yep.
Yeah, this whole like Numenorian elf supremacy thing. Maybe that's not so good. Like, who's on your side?
Yeah, that they became sort of like champions of a non-Western people,
right,
in the South or in the East. And I think it's relevant that you say that you lack closure, because that's the deal with some of these topics that we're going to come up with today, is that they're tantalizing. Like, we want to know more about the Blue Wizards to the point where I'm ready to write fan fiction about it, but Tolkien just doesn't deliver. And I think, I don't have the quote, but we've talked about it before. He said specifically that some things are meant to not be understood in this world, that they don't have clear explanations.
Mm-hmm.
In that way, I think it mirrors our world.
So that we as speakers, readers, listeners should expect non-closure on everything.
Yeah, mystery.
Yeah.
Expect mystery and enigma. Okay, here we go. Number 10.
Number 10.
All right, so surprise, there's actually 11 topics.
Not allowed. Top 10.
Well, so one of them, though, is from The Hobbit, and that's why we're going to
go.
I'm not going to say it
allow
first, because
outside.
I don't think it's the least weird, so I don't want to do it as number 11. I want to do it as number whatever it's listed. But it is from The Hobbit. So number 11, which is so broad that it's almost not on, shouldn't even be on this list, but it's religion, and the practical aspects of religion in this book, I think, are obscure or kind of missing.
So it's more the absence of religion.
Yeah. What's the nature, like if you were on the Wikipedia page for Arda, or
what's
like,
Arda again?
I think it's the world.
The universe? The world.
I think, well, yeah. I think it's the world.
The known existing place of matter. Earth, the universe, but it's not Earth, it's Arda.
Yeah, Arda's the world. It's Quenya for the world. Or the realm.
I thought, and they speak Quendi. That's what the elves speak.
We talked about this earlier.
Yeah,
I don't remember which is which. Quendi and Quenya.
Go back.
Yeah. We can check it. Yeah, go back, y'all. Go back.
We're not checking it.
Okay, so I think there's one time when I noticed religion, and we've talked about it before on this episode.
Yeah, in the Two Towers.
With Faramir in them?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember what they say?
Faramir mentions that before we have a meal, we will face the west, sort of as a memory of Numenor of the West.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of like, I'm thinking of Rajni Edens, and like before we do this, or like at the end, like we're going to thank the ancestors. We're going to recognize the ancestors. And he has this poem, Beautiful Sun-Kissed People, where like talks about ancestors, etc. So this is sort of like that.
Yeah, is it to the ancestors when Faramir says it, or is it to the Valar?
It's west anyway.
Mm-hmm. In a nearby scene, Damrod says, "May the Valar turn him aside.
Speaking of the Oliphant that's charging at them.
Is that who they're trying to turn aside?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like the notion of
There's-
invoking a god,
It's the
God's
only-
protection,
Yeah,
a
that's
blessing.
the only time the Valar were mentioned as far as I can remember.
Yeah, it's maybe like not a blessing, but like a hex or a curse, right? Channeling divinity, the divinity of the Valar, trying to turn aside an enemy.
But is it channeling divinity, or is it just...
It's a request, right? They beseech the Valar.
But then again, like, you could be like, Lord, help us. And like, who's Lord? Is that like Lord Jesus Christ? Or is that Lord Denethor?
Your name here.
Right. Lord Aragorn? Like, who's the Lord?
Whoever can save us from the charging Oliphant, right?
Lord John?
You never see in these books like a temple to one of the gods, right? To one of the Valar. No temples.
No.
I mean, like, what's even like a temple in this book?
The burial grounds.
Yeah, burial grounds are...
The tombs.
That's religious.
The halls of whatever Denethor burned, the pyre, and whatever that was sacred in some way.
You mean the location was, or the choice to try to destroy...
The location was as much of a sacred place as I could think of any.
He is making a sacrifice too, right? It's not... He doesn't... I don't think we could check, but I don't think he says to a certain Valar... You know, none of the Valars want human sacrifice, except for Melkor, maybe. He's out.
Malcor's out.
Yeah. So, speaking of the burial grounds, we're going to get at them in a minute. We have talked about how some of the Númenórean descended kings became like necromancers. Right? They started worshiping the dead, and the lineage became... You were talking about how they became more enamored with their ancestors.
Right.
So enamored with their ancestry that they couldn't focus on the offspring in the future.
Right.
And that feels like
that comes from the text somewhere in the books. I don't remember where at
that
this moment.
could be a religious impulse, right? To trace an ancestry.
But is it like, so then what's religion? Is religion dogma? Is religion ritual? Is religion something you hold something sacred? What do you mean by religion?
All the things you said are good, and I don't want to try to define it, but
right.
I do think that we can say these elements of religion are missing in Middle-earth. And I think temples are missing, locations, places of worship are missing. And I think practice, like liturgical practice or even theurgy, there doesn't seem to be any work that they're doing that's religious in nature.
As relating to a deity, because
there
are these burial sites. Rohan has them. The Barrow Downs are them. The place in like the catacombs or whatever in Minas Tirith. These places exist. There are rituals around burying the dead.
There were rituals, right? We don't see any performed.
Well, Theoden, as he was buried. Does that happen? They take him and bury him?
I don't know. I'd have to look again.
Or Theoden...
that would be... Going back and looking for the burial scenes, if there are some. Who else is buried? Is Aragorn at the end of the book? Is Aragorn buried? Do they refer to his marriage, and they refer to maybe his burial later?
I don't.
Theoden's buried.
The end of the book ends with Samwise Gamgee returning from the grave.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking about the appendix, right?
Right. So, and I didn't read the appendix because that's not that's not the book.
Scene. Yeah.
It ended. There's no chapter title. It's called Appendix A. Appendix B, that's not the book.
Everyone I talk to who listens to this podcast says, I love it, but you just don't talk about the appendices enough.
because they're outside. Technically, they're not part of. They're outside. Oh, listen, technically they're part of the book because they're in there in their pages. All right,
it's all
fine,
good.
whatever.
It comes up sometimes. It's all good.
Well,
it's all good. You know, other auxiliary sources arise.
Maybe I'm just more interested in the story rather than the.
We're gonna take a peek for Theoden's burial site, and before we dive into the books, he is killed in battle, right?
Theoden is yes.
Okay, cool. We'll be right back. So we went in and we found some stuff about people dying. that's related to some religious impulses. We found a thing about Denethor, and we found a couple things about Theoden. And let's just do them in order of sequence of events. Denethor he's trying to kill himself and his son, and he's in despair, right?
Right, the pyre of Denethor.
Yeah. And I was looking at it because there's something kind of religious about the notion of sacrifice. What is he appeasing, or what's his impulse here? And what I found is this. Denethor says to Gandalf, Denethor says to Gandalf of Faramir, he will not wake again. Battle is vain. Why should we wish to live longer? Why should we not go to death side by side? And then, authority is not given to you, steward of Gondor, to order the hour of your death, answered Gandalf. And only the heathen kings under the domination of the Dark Power did thus, slaying themselves in pride and despair, murdering their kin to ease their own faith. And then they say Faramir or whatever. So that's religiously interesting to me because child sacrifice is a religious impulse, and there's a lot of content there. But one thing I'm reminded of is how in the Torah, God says, like, don't stop or don't passing your children through fire to this god that is called Molech.
Okay.
You know this? Do you know this bit
I don't know this.
from the Bible? Yeah.
I know the Abraham Isaac thing.
We've talked about that. And
Yeah.
one of the things that God says in the Bible is stop or don't do this, sacrificing your children to Molech, passing them through fire. And some people have said this means like no more child sacrifice. That's a superstitious way to do things, and we're not doing that. But it's also possible that humans never really did that, and we just are reminding ourselves religiously, like, don't do that. There's no reason to do that because it's not productive for humans. I'm just speculating, but either way, Gandalf in this book seems to be suggesting that there was a religious impulse, like in the Torah. The notion is this thing used to happen and it's bad. You don't have the authority to kill your children anymore.
From what you just read, it also might seem like Morgoth or whoever it was telling these old men of old to be like, all right, how about you just end yourself and your whole lineage, and then I don't have to deal with you. Like that, how convenient would that be for me? Right. And then you can like pretend you still have faith, like, or whatever. Yeah. So they decided to cancel themselves.
Yeah, and it might even just be Sauron doing that in the Second Age.
I don't know.
We are not going to look for this, but some digging might show some things about Numenor, because as Sauron influences the late Numenorean king, Ar-Pharazôn, there might be some sort of child sacrifice kind of stuff going on in that. I don't know. Do you know?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
It also seems like Denethor wants to burn himself so he's not so nobody can desecrate his grave. He's in ash.
Yeah. He doesn't want to be.
He's like, the city's gonna fall, everyone's gonna die. I might as well be in control of it. And if I burn myself, you can't desecrate my body.
This is like Hitler chewing a cyanide tablet and shooting himself in the head in an underground bunker, right?
And then he was taken out to a ditch and burned.
I don't know. I just hear these are all urban myths to me.
Right.
Rumors of war, as it were.
I believe he was burned in the ditch outside.
And then we've got Theoden on Theoden as dead man, as a religious exemplar. Do you want me to do the Leyden State thing first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. When Eomer comes back from the battlefield to the Houses of Healing, in the chapter called the Houses of Healing, when he comes back from the battlefield, Minas Tirith's already been besieged, and Theoden's been killed. He comes to the hall of the tower seeking the steward, but they found his chair empty, and before the dais lay Theoden, king of the Mark, upon a bed of state, and 12 torches stood about it, and 12 guards, knights both of Rohan and Gondor. And the hangings of the bed were of green and white, but upon the king was laid the great cloth of gold up to his breast, and upon that his unsheathed sword, and at his feet his shield. The light of the torches shimmered in his white hair like sun in the spray of a fountain, but his face was fair and young, save that a peace lay on it beyond the reach of youth, and it seemed that he slept. So I don't know, I see some, the repetition of 12 is conspicuous, and the arrangement of the sword and the shield.
And they did the same with Boromir when they put him in the boat. They put shield at his, I think they put the shield at his feet, his sword and all the swords of his enemies that he slew at his feet too, before sending him over the Falls of Rauras.
So a lot of identification with the weapons.
Yeah.
Right.
After, like, way at the end, in the chapter of many partings, they talk about taking Theoden back to Edoras. And they take him back. This is a passage from that. Men of the Mark prepared the funeral of Theoden, and he was laid in a house of stone with his arms and many other fair things that he had possessed. And over him was raised a great mound covered with green turves of grass and white evermind. And now there were 8 mounds on the east side of the barrow field. So this is sort of the burial rituals. They're creating a barrow field that also like harkens to the Barrow Downs east of the Shire. So they're laid with great possessions, buried.
Buried with stuff, huh?
Yeah, stuff.
Yeah.
Same with the Barrow Downs.
And then at the very end of the whole, in the appendices, at the end of the timeline, we've got the death of the passing of King Elisar. It says that it is said that the beds of Meriadoc and Peregrine were laid beside the bed of the great king, and then it also mentions what we've talked about before about Legolas builds this gray ship, sails it down the Anduin and over the sea with Gimli, and they all go to Valinor. So not much there, but the laying of people together is interesting, especially what you just said about Aragorn's heavy-handed demands of authority. Like, what, did Merry and Pippin die on the same day? It almost implies that they're sacrificed with him, the way that Faramir would be. It doesn't imply it. One can imagine a world where King Elisar says, "Get me those 2 hobbits, because I'm going to die," and they're going with me.
Sort of like Egyptian pharaohs are buried with servants.
So goes the story, yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's definitely what Denethor's doing, trying to take Faramir with him.
Yeah, but he and Aragorn never had anything over Merry.
Other than dominion of the entire known world.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so there's some ceremony. What can we, in summation, what can we say about nothing about religion in general, but we can say something about funeral rites that they're Go ahead.
Right, so there's funeral rites. I have this feeling that the Grey Havens, traveling to the west over the sea, is like the afterlife.
Yeah.
That's as close to an afterlife as we can get. They're leaving this world and going somewhere.
To a more perfect sort of realm.
Heaven? Is that what you said? Heaven?
Heaven is used to describe that thing, sure. Mm-hmm.
Heaven is the more perfect.
It's an idealized version, and even the gods that reside there, like pantheons of gods, they have like an archetypal range. They're not as mixed up and confused as people and elves. They have like certain clear roles. It's just a more idealized. It's a realm of forms, Platonic realm of forms.
Right, but it's never actually existed in text.
It finds manifestation in the real world, and then there's like a back to the source. Everyone's going back to the source. And that's maybe, I don't know how that's related to the stuff thing.
Ashes, ashes, dust to dust.
Back to an essential type almost. And that's why I'm wondering if like the sword thing and the shield thing is like in death you become identified with this symbol. You stop being a complex human and you become identified with a symbol. I'm guessing with the swords.
Mm-hmm. Complexity.
These dudes love their swords.
Yeah, they do.
Swords are singular, Phallic. They're phallic.
Sure. They're an extension of an arm. They're pointy. They give you power and control.
Yeah. Okay.
The simplest, which is physical dominance.
You want to talk about religion anymore?
No.
Okay. You ready for number 9? Number 10. No,
number
9.
10.
Number 9. Yeah, number 10. Number 10's easy. We don't have to talk about it long. Shadowfax.
The king of the horses.
Mm-hmm.
Horse lords. Greatest of all horse lords.
He's a horse lord.
Yeah.
Shadowfax is.
Yeah. He is the lord of the blah blah blah, which are the best race of horses.
Are the
Like
the
the thoroughbreds.
Rohirrim also called the horse lords ever?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe Shadowfax is the lord of the horses.
So what's interesting to me about Shadowfax is that I think there's a kind of a trope in fiction of an unrideable stallion who is bonded with one person.
Right. There's the bucking bronco. There's cowboy lore. There's whoever like can break the horse and like tame them.
Yep, that happens in Lonesome Dove. There's a horse that only one person can ride. Have you ever read The Black Stallion?
No.
Black Stallion's about that. There's a boy, I think his name's Alec, and I think he's stranded on an island with this black stallion, and he tames it or breaks it. I don't know what word they use,
right.
but it's more like a cooperation in this. This fantasy is that a human and a horse are cooperating,
Which is how it's portrayed here
with Gandalf and
with
Shadowfax.
Gandalf and Shadowfax, or Shadowfax and anyone, that he will not have a saddle. He will not be saddled or bridled. But if he is willing to bear you, that is enough, and he will not let you fall.
Yep, and Gandalf fucking loves Shadowfax, right?
Sure.
You think you don't think it's like his? He seems to. I think that Gandalf expresses love of Shadowfax more than a love of any other character.
Okay, I can see
Name one character Gandalf loves more than he loves Shadowfax.
Fine.
Can't do it, right?
Fine.
It's Shadowfax. And why does he love Shadowfax?
You have a theory on this one?
I have a thought, yeah.
Because they're friends.
That wasn't my theory, but that's a good theory. You think they feel bonded? He feels bonded with him?
Sure, they're bonded. They're bonded like the Avatar movie where you put the end of your ponytail into the mane, and there's a bond.
An Avatar movie. Avatar the Airbender or Avatar
the
blue
guys.
Haven't seen it.
Well, they have ponytails, and they have like these little openings, and they bond with the things that they ride.
Yep.
So there is that bond.
And the Golden Compass and that whole thing. There's a whole thing with
the familiars.
Yeah, but they're called daimons, right?
Demons.
Sure.
Daemons. Daimons.
All usage is acceptable.
Miscellany.
Yep.
Tomato.
I think that Gandalf loves Shadowfax because he's fast. I think it's that simple.
Skill based.
Mm-hmm. And speed, and also Gandalf is like
proficiency based.
Well, he's a thinker. He's very. He's a
Gandalf's
a strategist.
He's the strategist. He's the puppet master.
Mm-hmm. And that is a suitable metaphor. Plus, it's a mess, and he can go fast, like Hermes or whatever.
Right.
He can zoom from location to location with Shadowfax. But Shadowfax is not divine. He's just a horse.
He's the best of all horses. The fastest.
Mm-hmm.
He is to horses sort of like Aragorn is to humans, to men.
Mm-hmm.
Just better.
Except, but Aragorn does it
genetically, physically better.
Shadowfax is genetically supreme.
Yes.
Aragorn is, according to pedigree, supreme.
Also like above that of lesser men because he lives longer.
Yeah, I guess he's the only one like that
genetically.
left. Is he the only one left?
No, like there's a couple. There's some.
What about this prince?
Prince Athelion.
Yeah, he's old too. He's probably like 300 or whatever.
Yeah, the other rangers, the other Dunedain.
But Shadowfax is just a horse, and he's just fast.
Sure, but it's like I feel like Shadowfax is sort of like the thoroughbred, the Arabian, the cream of the crop horses. They're not like so they're different breeds of horses. It's not like the wild horse.
But he's not like a wizard. Is not a dude who's at the top of his game. He's a god disguised as a dude.
Sure.
And Shadowfax is a horse.
He's a horse.
Yeah.
The best of all horses.
And I think that's why Gandalf loves him so much, because he envies his realness.
He's not like Shadowfax is like Secretariat.
I don't know Secretariat, but that's a racehorse, right?
Right, it's the racehorse. Secretariat was a racehorse who got like stood up within a minute of being born, or like some insane thing where like, well, I've never seen that happen. And then Triple Crown winner, and they were like worried in the last race, like, oh, he's like breaking out too early, he's going to be passed, and then he just crushed everyone.
Yeah,
like won by an insane amount of distance, and people were like, that's ridiculous.
That's like the Bobby
and then
Fischer.
They made a movie about him.
The Bobby Fischer of horses.
Whoever Bobby Fischer is.
He's a chess dude. People know the name LeBron James, right?
Yeah, that's debatable. There's a great debate around LeBron James. Like
in general?
all-time scorer in history for sure.
Yeah, but then in terms of name, and that is
right.
I want to talk for just a second about that, because do you remember as a kid? I don't know if this is. I think it's common, because I know there's a band that named themselves Shadowfax. So I think it's common to read that name and be like, hell yeah. Like, it's just so rock and roll.
So
man.
Shadowfax is like LeBron James if there were no Michael Jordan or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
It's not just
or Larry
LeBron.
Bird.
It's
Like,
all kinds. There's people's names that become, they become symbols. They're like charged with this power.
Yeah.
Obviously Jordan.
Usain Bolt.
Yeah, that one's fun because it's got the word Bolt in it.
Right.
I mean,
what I'm saying is there's no competition for Shadowfax. There's no debate.
Yeah, and what I'm saying is his name is numinous. Something about the way it comes off the mouth. Shadowfax,
Oh, I see.
Yeah, no, just the straight joy of saying the name Shadowfax. It's a dope name. And it stands for dopeness at the highest level.
Okay.
I don't know the band at all. I think they're a metal band. I think it's a metal name. All right, number 8. No. Number 9. Easy money. Shelob.
Okay. Shelob.
What do you know about her?
Oh, she lives in these dark caves in the paths of Cirith Ungol near there, and
you know how old she is?
Very old. She eats her children.
You know who she's related to?
The other spider.
The other spider. I had her name written down.
What was Hagrid's favorite spider? What was Hagrid's pet?
I don't know. That's a question
they're probably related.
What's the 9 against the 9 analog in the Harry Potter world?
What?
What's the 9 against the
what do you mean
what's
analog?
What's the number that you would use? You'd be like, for some coy podcast about Harry Potter, you'd call it the 3. What are they called? The 3 things? The Elder whatevers?
Oh, the line, the circle, the triangle.
Yeah, what are those called?
Deathly Hallows.
Yeah, it doesn't have a number.
Trinity.
Let's see what Robert Foster's Guide to Middle Earth has to say about Shelob. Yeah,
Aragog, that's the name.
Good. I'm glad you. Oh, Aragog's the name of Hagrid's
spider.
Yeah, I was like, nice. He nailed Shelob's ancestor's name.
No,
but we're gonna get that too.
Shelob, Aragog, similar.
Also good name. So in the guide, it says first age through fourth age, which I don't know what to make of that, because she survives Sam's attack. I guess so, right? She just crawls off. That's wild.
She crawls off and then she whimpers, and like, of course she's tough as shit. She's not dying.
So she's been around since the first age.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Pestilent
her offspring dwelled in the Efelduoth and in Mirkwood. So those Addercops that Bilbo and them run into are the degraded versions of their Shelob's
right. So
offspring.
the same thing with like Aragog's children want to eat everyone in Harry Potter.
They do.
Yeah, they attack all the people.
I don't remember that. Okay, but does she cares about them or not? Because Shelob just drops them and goes, and then you were saying she eats her own kin later?
Yeah, I think she eats her own children.
Yeah, her ancestor, who we're going to look up in a minute, I think is notorious for eating stuff. I think she eats stuff.
Yep.
And I don't I'm using she because I think that's what Tolkien does, but I do think it's more like an archetypal force in the books.
It's also she-lob.
8 men, elves, orcs. She trapped Gollum, but released him on the condition that he bring her food.
That's interesting.
We know how that plays out. Although I can't imagine 2 hobbits is a big feast for a giant spider.
Yeah, but it could be like his promises.
Shelob paralyzed Frodo, blinded and stabbed by Sam. Used the vial of Galadriel and Sting. So those are the weapons that were used to hurt her. She may have eventually died of her wounds. This is what Foster tells us. She may have eventually died of her wounds or of starvation caused by her inability to hunt while blind.
Yeah.
Okay.
So instead of hunting, she has to trap solely, perhaps.
Yeah, or she has to convince things to bring her food.
Right.
Because she's like a spider goddess.
But if she's trapping, like, what's going on, like, who's passing through that disgusting, gross place? Probably all living creatures are like, no, thank you.
After the war, I don't know. Maybe there's a bunch of orcs going one way or the other. But I don't know what happens to Mordor after.
Probably not
what happens to
sustainable.
Mordor after the war? You know?
Yeah, I don't know.
They just move all the industry.
They did something with Minas Ithil.
They move all the
Minas
industry from
Morgul.
Gondor.
They did something. They were like, we're not going to settle there. We're going to let it fall down, and then after it falls down, and
who said that? Aragorn and them were like, yeah, men were like, we're not going to re-inhabit that city.
Yeah, we're not doing that. We're not rebuilding that. That's going to collapse. Like, we're moving on.
Shelob's ancestor is named Ungoliant, and you were saying that Stephen Colbert knew the answer to that question. Who's Shelob's parent?
Right. He, I think it was this past year. He was asked trivia questions to win a pair of genuine Mary's genuine ears from the movies.
She, I'm looking at the Lord of the Rings fandom right now, and that source says that she's a primordial who takes the form of a giant spider. And it does use she, but she's more like a feel.
Like a feel?
Yeah, feels. She's a
feeling?
She's a feeling, yeah.
Okay.
A feeling of hunger.
Oh, like famine is one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
Yeah, like hunger is one of the yeah. She's a
Is it hunger or is it famine?
She's not famine. She's hunger, right? She's just like
Are they both horsemen of the apocalypse?
I don't know.
There's war, pestilence, famine,
and death.
Death.
Probably.
So she would be like, she's like famine, the feeling.
Well, she's never satisfied, I guess. The fandom also says that her origin is unknown even to the Valar.
Right.
Ungoliant drinks the sap from these trees. She also poisons them, and then she demands that Morgoth give her these gems, and she eats the gems, but he won't give her the Silmarils. So she doesn't eat the Silmarils, but she eats all kinds of stuff, and Morgoth has to defeat her himself, even though she was helping him raid Valar of its light and beauty. She's like a beauty drinker.
So she's helping him raid and take over and have power and everything, but then she's also consuming all of the plunder.
Yeah, the demand is that she consumes
and
all the plunder.
And Morgoth's like, that's mine.
I guess, yeah.
I wanted that. Stop eating it all.
Yeah, even as like a god, he's
like, you're eating the spoils. That's what we're doing it for. Stop.
That's why I say she's maybe feeling, because she seems to be even more primordial than the gods.
It's like someone helps you plant raspberry bushes and tend to it, and then eats all the raspberries. And then you're like, why?
Yeah, and then
I didn't
maybe
get any.
And then maybe continues to eat everything else.
Right.
Yeah, won't stop eating. Yeah, hungry ghost or whatever. Okay.
The mouse with the cookie.
8. And this is the one you're prepared for, because it's Bombadil.
Bombadil.
And Goldberry. I collapsed them both.
Yeah, because they're together.
Yeah, and the fact that Tom Bombadil seems to be the enigma and Goldberry just comes off as his wife is probably more just a function of that basic issue of focusing on the male characters that we talked about. You know, it's not that Tom is actually more enigmatic or more ancient than Goldberry. It's just that he's the male character, and he
Right.
gets,
Or that he's more important in the partnership, in their partnership.
yeah. It's just that our perspective is skewed.
Right.
So I think we'll talk about them both. Tom is a famous example of a character that people are always talking about him as the thing that is enigmatic and unexplainable in Middle Earth, I feel like.
Yes. He's also notoriously missing from the film adaptations.
Did they film it and cut it?
I don't think they filmed it.
Yeah, that's curious, isn't it? Because it's obviously to cut down on the time, but it's also like they don't, like, how would you even approach it? It doesn't make sense.
They probably don't understand it. So who is Tom Bombadil? If we look in Fellowship of the Ring in the House of Tom Bombadil, the chapter, he is the master of wood, water, and hill. The trees and the grasses and all things growing or living in the land belong each to themselves. Tom Bombadil is the master. No one has ever caught old Tom walking in the forest, wading in the water, leaping on hilltops under light and shadow. He has no fear. Tom Bombadil is master.
And that's Tom Bombadil on Tom Bombadil, right?
That's Goldberry on Tom Bombadil.
Oh, no kidding. That's Goldberry talking about
Talking
him.
to Frodo.
Interesting. Tom talks about himself in the third person also, right?
Yeah.
His song is about himself.
Yep. It's a fun song.
Yeah, I had a tune for it when I was a kid. You probably did too, but you listened to the audiobook, so you got a tune, right?
Sure. We're like the cadence.
Are you going to sing it? Because
Old
mine
Tom
went...
Bombadil is a merry fellow. Bright blue his jacket is, and his boots are yellow. Like a cheerful, upbeat kind of thing.
Mine is the same cadence, except it was good Tom Bombadillo. Doesn't it at some point say Tom Bombadillo? Or,
Tom Bombadil, yeah, that's
Tom
that's
Tom
the first
Bombadillo.
introduction to him. Frodo's running around like, help, 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 and he hears that crap.
Yep. So, without looking at the book, here's what I think is neat about Tom Bombadil, is that he puts on the ring, he doesn't disappear, takes it off, and acts like it doesn't matter at all.
Right.
And later, Gandalf, or Elrond, but I think it's Gandalf, Gandalf at Elrond's place says he wouldn't have come even if we invited him.
Yeah. Well, his realm ends near sort of at the edge of the Barrow Downs Road. There's like a geographic location for him.
He's never identified with one of the Valar, as far as I know. No one ever implies that he is actually a Valar or a Maiar or whatever in disguise.
There's some ethereal, like, magical quality to him. Like he's always existed. Like he's not actually a humanoid. Maybe he's like the Earth or something. Because he's master, but he doesn't control. Everything belongs to themselves, but he's master.
Yeah. Robert Foster says that his race is unknown, although it is possible that he was a Vala. He uses a Vala. Maybe Vala is singular.
Valar?
I guess.
Huh.
Absolute power within the Old Forest.
Absolute power, but, like, there's no power. There's power, but no power.
Yeah, he's like a recluse, right? His power is in that he is at one with nature and he doesn't get involved in worldly affairs.
Yeah. Then I think that's what when I was looking at this recently, it was most noteworthy that he's sort of always been there. He's always existed. He's of the earth. He's like very old school. He doesn't have tiled floors, stone floors. He's got this like lovely spring feeling cottage. He puts fresh cut greens on the ground as part of it. So he's very earthy. He doesn't care about geopolitical power. He doesn't care about control. He doesn't care about the ring or the power of the ring. He says that hobbits are better, like, just run naked. You don't need the jewelry. Your hand is fairer without it. You don't need any of these like little trinkets, which is interesting. He seems very natural.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one counterpoint to that, which I have a question about when he frees the hobbits from the Barrow Downs, and he brings out all of the gold and treasures and spoils to sort of break the spell. And he says, "Oh, let it be there, free for the taking, for birds or beasts or men or passersby or whomever." He takes he takes something shiny, a little pin or something, so he could take it home to Goldberry.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Just take one thing.
He took one thing.
Yeah, and that's almost kind of like the...
Sort of breaks my theory of like
the
trinkets.
I don't know that it does, in the sense that, and I don't know a lot about Zen Buddhism, but I think there's a notion that nirvana and samsara are the same thing, right? And that you're always kind of like he doesn't totally absolve himself of any desire for stuff. He accepts some level of materialism. He takes a petty object.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to become attached to it or whatever, but he doesn't go the like ascetic route of saying, I reject all pleasure.
Right.
I reject all earthly things. He's so I don't know how to put it. It's like it's a non-duality thing. He doesn't have to take one side. He doesn't have to be
doesn't have to be binary.
He doesn't have to accept it, or he can play both sides of that binary. He can say, yeah, it's a cute pin. It's not like it's gonna come corrupt him or whatever, but he's not gonna be corrupted by an absolute sense of himself as being perfectly monkish and austere.
Yeah, so this is the thing, the text. He brings out this pile of stuff, and he chose for himself from the pile a brooch set with blue stones, many shaded like flax flowers or the wings of blue butterflies. He looked long at it, as if stirred by some memory, shaking his head, and saying at last, "Here is a pretty toy for Tom and for his lady. Yeah. Fair was she who long ago wore this on her shoulder. Goldberry shall wear it now, and we will not forget her." So it is a piece of jewelry, a toy that also harkens to the natural world, flax flowers, blue butterflies.
Yeah.
But there's also something like that non-closure, that like you're never going to like stirred by something, as if stirred by something, some memory. It's like, what's from the past? What is that?
Yeah. Or like, I don't know. Okay, so I don't eat fast food, I guess as a rule or whatever, but I don't really desire it anymore.
Yep.
But I think it would be appropriate for me to accept and eat at some point something like a cheeseburger from McDonald's or like a Wendy's milkshake. I think that would be maybe psychologically healthy to know that I'm not, I don't want to become phobic of mainstream culture. Tom's not, he's given himself a little hedge on becoming phobic of mainstream culture by accepting a little bit of it. He's taking this pin home.
That makes me, your analogy of McDonald's, eating a McDonald's burger, reminds me of something like some friend of mine. We were talking about vegetarian or veganism, and someone, it was like, I'm not a vegan or vegetarian, but like if I go to a place and I sit down to eat and the host has made chicken Alfredo, I'm not going to say, no, you need to make me something else because I'm vegetarian. Like, they'll just eat it and be like, yep,
sure.
Thank you so much, appreciate the meal. So not so...
Yeah, I mean, I use
firm, static, rigid.
I use the word Zen loosely because I don't understand it well, but that strikes me as kind of a Zen attitude.
Right. Like, this person wouldn't never buy chicken, would never cook chicken, but
right.
It's given as a gift by a host. They'll eat it. And
this person also isn't holding themselves in a rigid type.
Right.
And also isn't afraid that they're going to become infected or addicted, right?
Right.
Okay. Now, what can we say of Goldberry?
Well, I also want like another...
yeah.
With Tom and the idea of the color blue, there's this moment, and when he... with the ring... So he asked Frodo, "Show me the precious ring." And Frodo was astonished that he even drew it out and handed it at once to Tom. So like that's interesting. This is in same chapter. It seemed to grow larger as it lay for a moment on his big brown-skinned hand. Then suddenly he put it to his eye and laughed. For a second, the hobbits had a vision, both comical and alarming, of his bright blue eye gleaming through a circle of gold.
Oh.
And that, I underline that as a visual contrast to the eye of Sauron being this
Yes.
red iron flame
Yeah.
in a circle, and this is the ring of Sauron and the blue eye shining through.
Ooh, it's
Blue,
almost
maybe
like
the color of water, sort of like a counterpoint to the red and the
yeah,
fire.
It's almost
I don't
like
know.
he's the polar opposite of Sauron. That's like the secret message in this book.
But it's like, is it a polar opposite, but it's not a binary because Tom isn't beholden to a binary.
He's not beholden to the binary. Sure.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a funny dude. It's also nice, this is a minor point, but in contrast to how much we were digging into it last episode, it's nice that his skin is brown, because so many fair-skinned people are assumed to have such superior ways and are privileged are privileged by the narrator.
And it could be as just, maybe it's just the hand is brown, sort of like a farmer or someone
Sure,
who works
yeah.
on the earth has like calloused
Either
brown
way,
worked hands.
It's brown either
yeah.
way. Yeah.
It's not a fair white hand.
No, he's not unsullied or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, he's of the earth.
Mm.
Okay, so what can we
And,
say?
and he speaks highly of Farmer Maggot, like who is of the earth. Oh, he's got his, there's wisdom in his bones, clay on his hands, and his earth or his feet are on the ground or something like that.
Yeah.
Even though Farmer Maggot beats Hobbit children.
Yeah, but Farmer Maggot reveals himself to be more mystical than we thought.
Right.
And it's interesting that as we edge toward the old forest, there's like a gradation into Tom Bombadillism as the archetypal man of the woods. What can we say of Goldberry?
Goldberry's interesting, and so Tom, when we meet Tom, he's bringing her water lilies. He's bringing like the last crop harvest, flowering, blossoming, the last glut of water lilies from this pool where they bloom first and latest. So, and like we see Goldberry sitting in this little cottage surrounded by ewers of water. She's surrounded by water and flowers. And I'm wondering if she's like not some type of nymph creature that needs water nearby. Tom found her by that pool, and now they're living together. So, like, does she need water in order to exist?
By that pool long ago I found the river daughter, fair young Goldberry sitting in the rushes. Sweet was her singing then, and her heart was beating. Right.
Right.
Yeah, and so she's like a nymph, right? She's the river daughter.
She is the river daughter.
Mm-hmm. And he's the earth, man.
So maybe she's water and he's earth.
Yeah. And you said he's bringing her at the beginning. He's bringing her lilies,
Mm-hmm.
but she's living in the house with him,
Yeah.
so she's not like bound to the river.
No.
Mm-hmm. What does she do? Is she feeding? Does she feed them, or does she make dinner?
For the hobbits?
Yeah.
They have a feast, and they feast like there's also this timelessness to this home where they sit and they talk and they have no idea how much time passes. It's almost more Rivendell than Rivendell, where like they could sit forever, but I don't know about the feeding part. They do have this nice, when they set the table, then Tom and Goldberry set the table, and the hobbits sat half in wonder and half in laughter. So there's this laughter thing, there's this comedy, there's this joy, this jovial nature of Tom, and like bright colors and green and yellow and colorful and lightness to their beings. So sat half in wonder, half in laughter. So fair was the grace of Goldberry, so merry and odd the caperings of Tom. Yet in some fashion they seem to weave a single dance, neither hindering the other. In and out of the room and round about the table, and with great speed, food and vessels and lights were set in order.
Perfect marriage. A childless marriage too. We don't hear any about offspring.
We do not.
That's interesting.
Tom is eldest. Eldest, that's what I am.
In the beginning of the House of Tom Bombadil, that's when they first meet her. I'm going to give the first description of Goldberry. The far side of the room facing the outer door sat a woman. Her long yellow hair rippled down her shoulders. Her gown was green as young reeds, shot with silver like beads of dew, and her belt was of gold, shaped like a chain of flag lilies, set with the pale blue eyes of forget-me-nots. About her feet in wide vessels of green and brown earthenware, white water lilies were floating, so that she seemed to be enthroned in the midst of a pool. So she creates a little pool around her.
Right, and that's what was...
Domesticated water.
That domesticated water is what I was thinking, like, does she need to be in the pool? So she was in the rushes, and she's recreating that.
Yeah, a lot of blue imagery, too, like with his eye.
Yep.
And what is it? What's blue?
The blue gems.
Yeah, the blue gems, yeah.
The blue gems on Goldberry's dress.
Mm-hmm. I wonder what the gold is, the sun on the water? Or...
But they're also... And the gold is shaped in leaves. So this trinket that he's bringing back from the Barrow Downs is shaped like flaxseed and has the blue of...
Yeah.
So there's this natural...
This is a man who's in love with a river. I can relate, frankly.
And the river is Goldberry, perhaps. River daughter.
Mm.
Maybe she becomes the river. Maybe she's whatever.
She's of the river.
She's of the river.
Okay.
And he is timeless.
Yep. You ready to go? Or you got more to say about Bombadil and Goldberry?
I don't know. There's definitely a respite and a refreshing nature to Bombadil, this whole thing. It's yeah. It's sort of like evil things didn't come into the Valley of Rivendell. It sort of feels like this is the most ideal place in the whole book.
But also maybe not devoid of that kind of evil.
Right, because it's got Old Man Willow.
Yeah, that Willow tries to eat the hobbits.
So maybe this is the place of appropriate balance, timeless balance that will last forever.
Wild nature.
Right. It's the nature. It's wild. But there's also this, whatever path they walk seems to be trimmed, maintained. It grows short so there's a path for them to walk.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like someone mowed the grass, but nobody's mowing the grass. Probably.
Yep. Okay.
The ultimate perennial garden. Maybe it's the Garden of Eden. Maybe this is Adam and Eve as they should have been.
If they never ate from the fruit of the tree of good and evil.
There's a theory.
Yeah, like an old version of them. After thousands and thousands of years.
And also the guy's name is Tom, and the generic name for any English person is Tom, like a Tommy.
I think about that a lot. Is it Tom in England, do you think? Joe in America, Ivan, etc.
Well, yeah, or like a John Doe.
Yeah, John Doe. Tom Doe.
It also goes back to the idea or whatever we talked about in Hobbits, where it's the common folk that are the most important, and Tom just seems to be like folk. He doesn't have high aspirations. He's not chasing after.
Yeah.
He's not fighting the corporate ladder. He's
folk
not
are
working
often
for more
doing,
money.
Folk
he
are
doesn't
often
want
doing that.
more.
Though.
He's got enough.
Yeah.
It's just living that life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There's something in that.
You dig him.
Yeah.
You dig the Tom Bombadil lifestyle.
I'm liking the Tom Bombadil
Yeah, I do
lifestyle.
too.
Yellow and green. Blue.
And blue, yeah. And brown.
And brown.
Okay. Next up is, I'm losing track of what number. I think we're on 7, maybe. The Nazgul's Flying Mounts. Again, we've talked about them briefly.
Yeah.
I have a description.
Lizardy creatures, bat-like wings, scaly-ish, not really scaly-ish, no feathers. Kind of a counterpoint to the great eagles.
This is from the Ballantyne's Return of the King, page 140. From the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. The great shadow descended like a falling cloud, and behold, it was a winged creature. If bird, then greater than all other birds, and it was naked, and neither quill nor feather did it bear, and its vast pinions were as webs of hide between horned fingers, and it stank. A creature of an older world maybe it was, whose kind, lingering in forgotten mountains, cold beneath the moon, outstayed their day, and in hideous eerie, right?
Like where birds
yeah.
perch,
Yeah.
dwell.
Is that how it's spelled? Or sound? Is that the way
Airy?
it's pronounced? Airy? And in hideous Airy bred this last untimely brood apt
Eerie.
to evil. And in hideous Eerie bred this last untimely brood apt to evil. And the Dark Lord took it and nursed it with fell meats, until it grew beyond the measure of all other things that fly. And he gave it to his servant to be his steed. Down, down it came, and then, folding its fingered webs, it gave a croaking cry, and settled upon the body of Snowmane, digging in its claws, stooping its long, naked neck.
Yeah, eerie for sure.
Eerie?
Eerie.
Yeah. So again, it's just kind of like a moment in this book where it's assumed that there are pockets in Middle-earth where you could find these eldritch beasts.
Like a pterodactyl.
It's like with chickens. What do we call it with chickens when they're special breeds? Like almost like an heirloom. You know what I mean? It's an heirloom bird.
Okay.
It's been specially bred for certain traits, fed a certain diet.
It's like an heirloom flying creature of corruption.
I think it's also kind of funny and typical how the notion is like there's a kind of meat that's fell, and you can if you feed the fell meat to this beast, it becomes more evil.
I sort of read that as like rancid meat.
I did too.
Sort of like which was vulture-like, condor-like, and these birds of corruption, and sort of their heads are featherless,
like a vulture,
right? Which is an adaptation, so they don't get the diseased whatever stuff in those feathers. Mm-hmm. But those birds are also super important to the ecology of our world.
Mm-hmm. That's part of that phobia of dirt,
right?
The dirt phobia, and
rot and stank.
Rot phobia. So the meat is infused with death and death and evil, and then you feed it to the bird, and it becomes more of a archetypal carrier of death.
I wonder if instead of like blessing a meal, if they curse it.
Yeah.
So like a rite or a ritual, religious, like we thank you for this food. Please bless this food to our use. Like curse this food and
make us more evil.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Again, it gets back to the religion question. Like, how in this world do you sanctify or curse food? I don't know. Okay. And they all ride him, right? It's not just the Witch King.
Correct.
Yeah. Although that narrative that we just heard, it sounds like the Dark Lord found one and fed it and gave it to his...
There are multiple flyers for sure in the movie. I believe they're in the book. Legolas shoots one down.
Yeah.
Like without seeing it.
Yeah. It's funny too how they're like dragons. Like when you see them flying around the tower or whatever, it feels kind of classically dragonish.
Right. Like a worm though, where the wings are the hands. So it's not like they're 4 feet and 2 wings.
Yep. All right. You got anything else to say about those guys?
When they burned the body, nothing else grew there. Like the flesh that burned on the fields of Pelennor, nothing else grew in that spot where it was burned.
Yeah,
so the corruption was so great. Sort of like salting the earth and nothing will grow there again.
Yeah, again with the like pocket of evil, right?
Yeah.
The bird is found in a pocket of evil, and then wherever the bird dies, there's this lingering pocket of evil.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, 5 maybe.
6.
We lost one at some point. This is number 5.
So we're never 11. There's 10.
I don't know.
We don't know.
Either way. The next one is the Barrow Downs, and we talked a bit about it, so we don't have to say much about it. All I want to say about the Barrow Downs is that I think it's interesting that maybe it's not one thing I want to say. I think it's interesting that they are trapped there. I don't understand how they're trapped exactly. They're like transfixed, right?
Yep.
And they lose consciousness because they wake up inside the crypt, right?
Yep.
So someone gets them in there. They're
something, some spirit.
They're called in, and
some spell,
and then they can't get out. It's only Tom that can get them out, right? All Frodo does is call on Tom,
right?
And Tom's power breaks the power of the Barrow Downs,
or the Barrow Whites.
Yeah. Now, white being a word meaning a spirit, right?
Yeah.
I think it maybe in English used to just mean a person.
It's sort of like, like wraith-like, spiritual, ghost-like.
Yeah.
And they've sort of inhabited the corpses of these old kings. These
Oh, you don't.
dying.
They've inhabited the corpses, or they
Yeah.
are the lingering spirits.
I think it's something else. I think they've moved in.
Oh wow! I always assumed that it was the spirits of these old kings, and that they were.
There's
monsters.
a link. There's a link to the memory of these old kings.
I thought
These are the
yeah.
like the old Numenorian kings from whatever realm was there. So it's like this broken down ruin graveyard of this old kingdom, which has become the Shire, where the
These
Shire
new-
was part of it.
And these are Numenorians, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it not? Is it not Angmar?
Angmar was more to the north.
Yeah.
But like maybe it's like Angmar and the evil spirits of there have like taken over this. I think it's in a realm that was taken over by Angmar during some wars. But what strikes me about the Barrow Downs is the ruinous nature, is the fact that these 3 books, this epic tale that we're experiencing, is part of like this super long history in this world where the Shire is this like beautiful haven within like this old destroyed past kingdom.
Yeah, that's a recurring theme.
Yeah.
And what's fun about the book is that we move as the characters move toward Gondor. It's almost like they move into the past, because they move out of the aftermath of there being a kingdom and into the reality of there being a kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
And the encounter with the Barrow-wights is early in that transformation.
It's
So
almost like the hobbits are living in the present. They're living in the now, and they go through like the very past of the Barrow Downs
Mhm.
and the Whites, and then they move into like the medium past of Gondor.
Yeah, shortly after the Barrow Downs, they meet a living descendant of the Numenorian kings.
Right.
Yeah. And then I also think it's neat that they're rewarded with stuff for getting out of the. This is we're going to get back at it in the next episode. It's a classic trope in role-playing games. You fight the thing inside the underground thing, and you get the thing.
Yeah, you
Right.
get the treasure.
Yeah. Bombadil hauls that out for them, right?
Yeah, he hauls it out for all comers,
Yeah.
and he gives them their knives.
And so I don't want to dwell on this too much, but you don't think that the spirits that are the Barrow-wights are the actual you think they've invaded the. You don't think that they come from the bodies and souls of the dead kings.
I don't think the initial spark comes from the bodies and souls, but it does work. It accesses it inhabits the bodies and accesses the souls somehow, because when it was either Merry or Pippin woke up, he talks about like, oh, it was this battle, and like I was stabbed through with a spear, and these people were attacked us, and so he has the memory of that battle that killed that person is still there.
I guess my take on it is that it's tied to this necromantic impulse, where the kings of old were obsessed with being alive. As the length of their lives diminish, they become more obsessed with eternity and immortality, and when they eventually die, this is like a lich in D&D. A lich is like this. They really want to be alive, and so I think that they're maybe trying to possess Merry and Pippin and Frodo and Sam.
I see.
Trying to take over their bodies.
So maybe, and if it is a spirit that comes in from the outside, maybe it's able to do that because of that trait.
Yeah, it could also be a spirit. I mean, spirit is spirit, right? I was going to say it could be a spirit that inhabits the king when the king's doing necromancy, and then dies, and then still wants to transfer to a new body.
Yeah, sure.
And at that point, we're basically talking about an impulse, among humans, that like an egregore or like an archetype, something that has almost independent volition, but it functions through humans.
Okay.
This evilish urge toward staying alive forever.
So it's also, I mean, there are barrows in Rohan, because Theoden gets made into a barrow.
Mm-hmm.
And he was sort of inhabited by sort of like that same type of like corrupting impulse.
To live forever?
Well, like
You're talking about
Saruman takes over Theoden's mind a little bit, like through spell.
Sure, okay.
And Wormtongue's little insidious
Right, yeah.
nature. So I wonder if that's like sort of Rohan could become that. The Barrows could like lead to a similar thing with the Whites, but they're still too young. They're still operational.
And those guys seem to be more accepting of death, right? They seem to take pride in dying for their people.
Very, very Viking-like.
Yeah, and so maybe their death is more restful, and maybe they don't have this.
The death is like the reward, and then they get to go to
Valhalla.
Thank you.
Unlike these northern kings who are desperate to stay alive.
Right.
Okay. Great. Bear Downs, you're done?
Bear Down's done.
Number 4. The lights that are hanging above the dead people in the marshes.
The dead marshes.
The dead marshes. There's like phantom lights above their heads, right?
Yeah.
In the water above their heads or above the water?
I think it's above the water. Can we check
And
the text on this one?
we can check the text in a second. Let's do our initial reaction, though, right? Gollum knows to avoid them. He
Don't
knows
follow the lights.
Yeah, because he knows that they will follow them, and what fall in or be grabbed is the suggestion, like the Barrow Downs, is the
They will
suggestion
succumb to the marshes.
that they'll go in, not
Yeah.
that they'll be pulled in by dead people. Do the dead people ever like open their eyes or do anything like that? They already have their eyes open, right?
Yeah, eyes are
And they're
open.
preserved dead people from the last alliance of... Is that the war that these dudes died in?
That was where the battle was, the Second Age battle.
The
Where-
end of the Second Age.
Yeah.
The last alliance of men and elves.
And like that was the
Against
field where they all
Sauron.
fought. So I sort of imagined that there were so many dead that there was no way that people were going to be able to bury and clean up after. So they just kind of left everyone. So all their bodies just got like corrupted, and maybe a
Well-
river got blocked, or it just was flooded.
You say
Maybe
that-
they chose to flood it. I
you
don't
say
know.
their bodies get corrupted. In fact, their bodies are preserved, right? Thousands of years, and you can still see them with their eyes open underwater.
Right.
That's crazy.
You know how like your body has fluid and like we're 70% water or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like all the fluid flowed out, creating the marshes.
Yeah, I doubt we'll get a scientific description of how the marshes work. But so we're gonna go to the text. I don't know, said Frodo in a dreamlike voice, but I have seen them too. In the pools when the candles were lit. They lie in all the pools, pale faces, deep, deep under the dark water. I saw them, grim faces and evil, and noble faces and sad. Many faces proud and fair, and weeds in their silver hair, but all foul, all rotting, all dead. A fell light is in them. Frodo hid his eyes in his hands. I know not who they are, but I thought I saw there men and elves and orcs beside them. You want to do Gollum?
Yes, yes, said Gollum. All dead, all rotten, elves and men and orcs, the dead marshes. There was a great battle here long ago, yes. So they told him when Smeagol was young, when I was young before the Precious came. It was a great battle, tall men with long swords, and terrible elves, and orcs is shrieking. They fought on the plain for days and months at the Black Gates, but the marshes have grown since then, swallowed up the graves, always creeping.
But that is an age and more ago, said Sam. The dead can't be really there. Yeah, Sam the realist, right? Is it some devilry hatched in the dark lands?
Who knows? Smeagol doesn't know, answered Gollum. You cannot reach them. You cannot touch them. We tried once, yes, Precious. I tried once, but you cannot reach them. Only shapes to see, perhaps, not to touch. No, Precious, all dead.
Sam looked darkly at him and shuddered again, thinking that he guessed why Smeagol had tried to touch them. Well, I don't want to see them, he said. Never again. Can't we get on and get away?
Yes, yes,
said Gollum.
but slowly, very carefully, or hobbits go down to join the dead ones and light little candles. Follow Smeagol, don't look at the lights.
So I guess we never find out why there's lights. I love Smeagol, and I like that the metaphor is to light a little light. You're going to go down into the swamp and light a little light.
This little light of mine.
Every time I read Sam's reaction to Sam's thought about why Gollum might have reached down, it is always fresh to me. I'm always like, oh, damn. You know?
Yeah, you had a reaction now.
We're all thinking the same thing, yeah?
What are we thinking?
What are you thinking?
I'm trying to go back.
Why would Smeagol maybe want to touch those bodies?
No idea.
I think to eat them, man. I think, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Really?
Why else? Yes, he's always going on about how Smeagol's gross.
Yeah, well, is that what Sam thinks? Sam thinks Smeagol wants to eat them.
That's what the narrator says, seems to say Sam thinks that Gollum wants, yeah. Or why he tried to touch him. It's also fun that Smeagol goes from first person plural to first person singular. He repeats himself. We tried once, now it's just me. You know what I mean? The Precious wasn't with him then. That one time he tried to reach down.
Right, but it wasn't with him, but he had it at that point. He was already corrupted by it.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so Robert Foster's Guide to Middle-earth says, marshes east of the Emyn Muil, expanded eastward throughout the Third Age, and at some point engulfed the graves of the men and elves slain in the Battle of Dagorlad. The graves became the mere of dead faces. And there's a thing, I can look at that in here. The mere of dead faces.
So the people did clean up after the battle. They did bury.
It says the graves, right?
So they had graves.
In the Third Age, 1944, many of the Wayne riders defeated in the Battle of the Camp were driven into the dead marshes where they perished. So there's 2 rounds of dead people, 1,500 years apart. I'm going to look up the Mere of Dead Faces, which I don't recognize that. Have you ever heard this thing referred to as the Mere of Dead Faces?
The marshes?
Yeah.
I guess not.
Mere of Dead Faces, it says. This is again from the Robert Foster's Guide to Middle-earth. Dark pool in the dead marshes containing the graves of men and elves killed in the Battle of Dagorlad. The faces of the dead men and lit candles showed beneath the surface of the water but could not be reached. And it just refers us to the 2 towers. So a great mystery. Why are there candles? That's crazy. There's nothing like that in this book.
It's sort of like a will-o'-the-wisp.
Mm-hmm.
That little light in the
woods.
The woods, but there's always like this watery, swampy nature to it.
Yeah, okay. Again, there's a real connection to the D&D plundering of Middle-earth for symbolism with the will-o'-the-wisps. But I don't think of will-o'-the-wisps as being tied to dead bodies, but it's the same thing that they're going to lead you astray, and you're going to step into something.
Right. There's I've also at some point, sometime, there's these little phenomenon of like a bunch of little insects flying around in like one spot over something. So maybe it's like no-see-ums or something, and they're like maybe something died on the ground, and like they're just the flies hovering around that little spot. And you can't really see them, but if the light will hit and it'll create like this mist and it's kind of moving, and you're like, oh, there's a thing there. But you turn the light on and it's not there, but you turn the light off and there's raking moonlight or something that hits it. You're like, oh my God, there's a spirit, but it disappears when the light goes on.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's corny to say it like this, but what a fantastical world where people can die and then nature can say, we're going to mark all these bodies with a single candle. It's almost like a physical or chemical occurrence,
right,
that seems to be mystical, but is in fact just inexplicable science.
Some biochemical, alchemical thing happening.
Yeah.
Like what in the body?
Yeah, causes the light to go on when you die.
See if we can get a science grant to go find out.
Yeah, but we don't see this anywhere else in the books. There's nowhere else where like someone dies and bing, a little light comes on above them. It's so you know that the enemy combatants that are down, you don't have to shoot them anymore.
Oh, I see.
When you're playing laser tag or whatever.
Right. On
the plains of Dagorlad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm good for number 3, and this is our cuckoo's egg because this one's from The Hobbit.
Egg.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I
one's
see.
from The
I
Hobbit.
see what you mean.
I was always struck in The Hobbit. I read the Michael Haig illustrated one as a child, and there's an illustration of these characters that I am always struck by. The storm giants playing football at night. Do you know the
Right.
scene I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I think they're like a day or two out from Rivendell, or maybe on their way to Rivendell, and there's a bad storm, and they witness stone giants playing a game
Yep.
where they're hurling a rock back and
They're
forth.
picking up rocks and hurling them and catching them and throwing them down into the valley.
Yep. And I don't have much to say about it. I really want to talk about it because the Michael Haig illustration is so compelling. They have these giant blue manes and they have tails, and they're not like big clumsy oafish looking giants. They're very athletic looking gigantic men wearing like gigantic skin outfits, and they have some theriomorphic qualities. You know, they're kind of lion-like.
Theriomorphic?
Yeah, animal-morphic.
I see.
Yeah, beastie, human beastie. And I don't know why. I don't know if that's actually earned in The Hobbit. I don't know if they say they had manes and they had tails, or if that's just Michael Hayden's
I
embellishment.
don't remember anything about manes
Yeah.
and tails in the book.
But also, you don't remember anything about giants anywhere else, right? Giants don't really come up in this.
No, but trolls.
Yeah, but trolls aren't the same as giants.
Right. I mean, they are large things.
I guess, yeah. There's not a lot of giants in Middle Earth,
Right.
and they happen to show up in The Hobbit, and they're seen at a distance, and that's not even really that far away.
Yeah, they remind me most of the giants in C.S. Lewis, The Silver Chair.
Yeah, in the Silver Chair specifically, huh?
Yeah, the Silver
I
Chair
haven't.
specifically.
That's the one that I haven't read. I haven't read The Silver Chair or The Horse and His Boy or The Last Battle since I was a kid,
Mhm.
but I've read the other 4 since then.
They're giants in the rocks in the Silver Chair.
Yeah.
I think there's one point like there was a sleeping giant and the people walked over him and they're like, "Oh, getting up! Oh, the giant's waking up! Quick, move along quickly!" So we don't get picked up and kicked sky high for a football, as Thorin might say.
Yeah. Thorin says that about what? Not about a giant, though, right? Does he?
I think it was Thorin, but
Thorin says it in The Hobbit.
in
that
the Hobbit,
scene, you mean?
in the Hobbit,
Oh,
he's
wow,
like, we need to find a place because we're gonna either be drowned by the water, like the immense amount of rain, or we're gonna be blown off the cliff by the wind, or we're gonna be picked up by a giant and kicked sky high for a football.
Yeah. It reminds me of the sort of
Not an American football, like a soccer ball.
yeah. It reminds me of the sort of playfulness of the fantasy world in The Hobbit, where things are a little more loose. I feel like he's a little looser with the tropes, and in the Lord of the Rings, things are a little more consolidated. Like,
Right.
we don't really have giants, or like when we have the Nazgul's flying beast, he goes out of his way to be like, this is a unique situation. This particular kind of bird was transformed.
Yeah.
Whereas in The Hobbit, giants, it's like taken for granted that there are giants.
Yeah.
No
He's
big deal.
developed his world a lot more. The Hobbit was what, 1936?
Yeah, I don't know.
Return of the King was 1956. So he's been working on, he'd worked on the world for 20 years.
Yeah. Giants, I don't think giants come up at all in Lord of the Rings.
No.
Okay. They do, you mentioned C.S. Lewis. They're mentioned several times in the different books. So it's like they're more typical of Narnia.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
and also J.K. Rowling's world.
Right.
They're more typical.
Right.
They're an anomaly in Middle Earth as far as I can tell. All right, 2 more. Number 2.
I don't know, there are only 2 more. I have 2 that I was going to talk about.
Yeah, word. So there's 4 more.
But are you going to hit my 2?
Maybe.
I kind of think you're going to miss my 1, but the main one I want to talk about.
I don't think I think we're going to have the same number 1. That's my theory. And also number 2 is the one that I mentioned to you already as an example on the phone the other
you're not
night.
going to have, so you don't have the...
Hold on.
Well, I know what that one
Yeah.
is, so you're not going to...
So you say it. Then
Either you're
it's-
not going to have my top one, or your top one's going to be the Balrog.
No, the Balrog's not on my list because I felt like we already talked about it.
Great. All right, so you might have my top one, but
Okay.
I kind of doubt it.
Was Balrog the other one?
No.
Okay, so this one is what?
Well, this one's number 2. This is the Mouth of Sauron.
Yeah. And I don't know what I want to say about him at all. Hadn't thought about it until since I wrote his name down. I think it's interesting how, to me, okay, so the reason he's anomalous and enigmatic is because he comes out at a pivotal moment, and it's not the Witch King of Angmar, because he's dead at that point.
Right, stabbed in the face.
But he's like this lieutenant that we just haven't. He might be the guy that went to the Lonely Mountain to offer a ring. He might be the chief emissary.
Yeah, but he's not the Nazgul.
I'm not sure that we even
He's not part
meet
of the
any
Nazgul.
sort of humanish emissaries of Sauron in the book at all. He doesn't send out ambassadors or whatever. He does.
He sent out that one.
We hear about it, but we never encounter that situation until
Yeah, but that ambassador is not going to be an orc or goblin that he sends out to the dwarves.
I guess not, right? Sure, I guess not. Right. You think
He doesn't like putting orcs or orcs in charge or on guard. He has men to do that. Men are sort of like men are in charge of certain parts of Mordor.
Yeah, I don't think we see that much though.
We don't see it much, but it is mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And I laughed earlier when you said like you hadn't thought about it much. So this is like the pure like here's a thing. Here's a miscellaneous part about the book. It's something enigmatic, and we're like this is gonna be a pure reaction, and then text looking up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. So this is like you're listening to it live,
and we can look it up because I know that he gives a paragraph description.
Right.
Of
There's
who
this
the guy is.
Guy, he's like an old, I think he was described as a black Numenorian, so sort of like the necromancer type, going into like the black arts or whatever. He's forgotten his name.
Sure, yeah.
So he doesn't like know who he is.
He's been consumed by the spirit of Sauron.
Sure.
He's the mouth of Sauron. We don't need to talk about it a lot, but I do think he's very creepily depicted in the movie.
Yeah.
And I have said this before, and I'm going to say it again.
Very well done. Creepily
didn't
depicted.
actually watch all the movies. I don't think I've ever seen Return of the King.
Mm-hmm.
But
that's what it was in.
But I've seen this scene
and only in the extended version.
Yeah, so I've looked up this scene in particular, and I am annoyed by it because Aragorn cuts his head off, and I think that's a very un-Aragorn thing to do. I don't think he would have done that, and I think it's a corny.
It's a very Hollywood thing.
Yeah, very Hollywood thing.
It's like a badass Hollywood thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah!
It's dumb. Yeah, it's dumb. But props to the costume design.
Yep.
It's really like Peter Jackson at his finest because it has the weirdness of like the Feebles. You ever seen the Feebles?
No.
You know what it is or whatever? Peter Jackson made a movie called The Feebles that's just like a demented Muppets movie.
No, I'm just thinking of Fraggle Rock.
Yeah, picture Fraggle Rock like Rob Zombie directs Fraggle Rock or whatever. Right? And that's what the mouth of Sauron is like. I mean, it doesn't have like teeth. His mouth is all...
It's almost like he has no lips.
And it's ultra
like,
wide, right? He's got extra teeth.
It's super big. His teeth are super long and pointy, and it's just moist.
And no eyes? Or his eyes are covered up or something?
He doesn't have eyes. The helmet has no place for eyes.
Right, yeah. He's all mouth.
But we're not sure, like the text may not support having no eyes.
I know, but
there are other depictions of him with eyes or one eye or whatever.
And that's why it's a nice costume design moment, because the text says this is the mouth of Sauron. And so
they only show the mouth.
Yeah, to do the visual interpretation of that is to emphasize the mouth at the expense of all other organs. Yeah. And not the mouth in the eating sense. The mouth in the issuing commands sense, right? Or the like, I mean, yeah, I don't know why he's called the mouth of Sauron. So let's get at the text, yeah?
Yeah, because he speaks for Sauron? Because he's the emissary, perhaps?
You want to get at it?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Okay, we found it, but we found some other interesting things. Some troubling things.
So this is The Return of the King, the chapter The Black Gate Opens.
And in my Ballantines, paperback Ballantines, on page 200, it says, "The 3 vast doors of the Black Gate under their frowning arches were fast closed."
In my version, it says, "The 2 vast iron doors of the Black Gate under its frowning arch were fast closed."
So some of the architecture of Mordor has changed.
So yeah,
between
depending
editions.
And this is my edition is also a Ballantines.
Yeah, but
Del
it's later.
Rey.
It's 90s, right, or 2000s?
Yeah, it's 2000s. It's got the pictures from the movies.
So it's been revised. Ooh. Imagine this is conspiratorial, but imagine if it was changed to conform to the way it was depicted in the films.
Yeah, probably. Maybe.
That can't. That's too insidious. Either
I mean,
way.
They changed.
Well, they didn't.
They changed the wording of the English versions of
Yeah.
Harry Potter.
Yep. That's a at date of publication thing, though. That's not in
Philosopher's Stone.
That's not because of the
Stone, that's
movies, though.
Different.
Right. The big giveaway would be if in your version, if Aragorn cut his head off, and in my version he didn't. But I don't think he does, right?
No.
Yeah.
So this is a few paragraphs past that. The black gate was thrown open and with a great clang, and out of it there came an embassy from the Dark Tower. At its head there rode a tall and evil shape, mounted upon a black horse, if horse it was, for it was huge and hideous, and its face was a frightful mask, more like a skull than a living head, and in the sockets of its eyes and its nostrils there burned a flame. The rider was robed in all black, and black was his lofty helm. Yet this was no ringwraith, but a living man. The lieutenant of the Tower of Barad-dûr he was. And his name is remembered in no tale, for he himself had forgotten it. And he said, I am the mouth of Sauron. But it is told that he was a renegade who came of the races of those that are named the Black Númenóreans. For they established their dwellings in Middle-earth during the years of Sauron's domination, and they worshipped him, being enamored of evil knowledge. And he entered the service of the Dark Tower when it first rose again, and because of his cunning he grew ever higher in the Lord's favor, and as he learned great sorcery, and he knew much of the mind of Sauron, and he was more cruel than any orc.
That's it. That's all we know.
Yeah, I love the part like for the character when he shows the mithril coat, he shows Sam's sword, and it elicits a reaction. And then the mouth, like he laughed again, for it seemed to him to like his sport went well. Good, he said. He was dear to you, I see. Or else his errand was one you did not wish to fail. It has. Like he's just getting off on this like pain and strife that he's seen. He's like, haha, my cards work.
Yes.
I played well.
And what he says next is, and now he shall endure the slow torment of years, as long and slow as our arts in the great tower can contrive, and never be released, unless maybe when he is changed and broken, so that he may come to you, and you shall see what you have done. That's sadistic, but also kind of shadow projection-y, because he's the one who has been transformed and trapped and broken utterly, right? He's enslaved to Sauron and to his evil machinations. The mouth is, and he speaks of Frodo and the torment that they're going to put Frodo through. He's like something in his psyche is trying to emerge, a realization of what he's put himself through.
Is it, or does like he seems to be like climbing the corporate ladder?
Yeah, it's miserable. I suspect.
But does he like does he feel it as miserable? Does he think it's miserable?
Not consciously. It's emerging unconscious. It's emerging through like a sort of Freudian or Jungian slip.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mouth of Sauron. Antipode to Aragorn, right? Too. This is like a
antipode.
What we like to call in the business foil characters, right?
Foil characters.
Yeah, they're foils. Aragorn his name is essential to him. To the mouth, his name doesn't matter.
Oh.
Aragorn
needs to be Aragorn.
Aragorn inherently leader-like. Mouth, like you said, climbing the corporate ladder. Aragorn inherently lives long through like his greatness.
Mm-hmm.
This guy has to advance his immortality through evil means.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah.
Like a counterpoint too.
Yeah. Aragorn
balancing.
doesn't like suffering. The mouth loves suffering.
Loves it.
Yep. Aragorn's taking his fate into his own hands. The mouth is
tied his fate to
Sauron. Yeah, totally. Okay. Number one. And
Number one.
We'll see if it's the same thing for you. You have one left?
Sure.
Okay. Let's say it at the same time. You ready?
1, 2, 3, and then say it.
Yeah, you ready? 1, 2, 3. The Paths
Samwise
of the
Gamgee.
Dead. Oh. Which one do you want to do first? Samwise Gamgee or Paths of the Dead?
Why don't we do Paths of the Dead, and then we'll give Sam the last.
Okay.
Because Sam also has the last word of the entire
Yeah,
story.
totally. That's good. I am surprised to hear you say Sam because he doesn't strike me as anomalous or miscellaneous or enigmatic.
Oh, well, we
But
didn't talk about.
We
it.
have. You're right.
This is like stash box wise, like we.
Yes, he does deserve more
Right.
airtime.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Paths of the Dead to me is the weirdest thing in this whole book. And when I was reading it as a child, I don't think it even registered. Like I think if you asked me a year after I read the book when I was 13 or whatever, what do you think about the Paths of the Dead? I would say I don't remember that part of the book at all. Like cuz I think it's pretty obscure. I don't think there's a precedent for it. And
It's sort of like a Deus Ex Machina.
Sure. Yeah.
It's like, oh, how are we going to do this? Well, forces are outnumbered. We got to have something else. We got to like even the numbers, even the playing field / battlefield somehow.
And don't they also have a Deus Ex Machina with some naval assistance that's not related, right? Do the Corsairs come to their assistance?
The Corsairs were on the bad guy's side.
The Corsairs were on the bad guy side, and did they put
No, the Corsairs were
Paths of the Dead dudes in ships to fight the Corsairs?
Paths of the Dead dudes defeated the Corsairs
Okay.
and then took the ships as a way to get to the battle
Right.
on time.
Okay. Who are these dudes? The Paths of the Dead dudes.
These dudes are dead men, spirits of men, ghosts, like undead, and they served kings of old in Gondor, and Gondor called on them to fight against whatever evil in that current, like, first, second, whatever age. Maybe it was the initial battle versus Sauron at the end of the Second Age, and these
Yeah, I
dudes
think it
were
probably
like,
was.
these dudes were like, no, we're not gonna fight. We're gonna go hide in these hills. Actually,
Yeah,
we're gonna
and-
run away.
They hid?
I think they hid.
Okay.
So then this is Tolkien bringing in like cowardice as well,
Right,
and like,
yeah.
I wonder how that relates to his experience in the war.
I know. I was just thinking about what you said about officers being charged with the duty to shoot soldiers who turned around.
Yeah.
Right. And the impact that would make on a young man.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then these men went and hid in the hills, and whatever king cursed them, like, you are cursed to live without rest
So-
until your oath has been, because you swore an oath, until your oath has been fulfilled.
Yeah.
Which is why Aragorn controlling Pippin's so fucked up. 'Cause
well, it's in the same
Pippin didn't make that oath yet.
It's in the same model.
You're applying the same level of.
Yeah, the implication I think is that
Subservience.
the lords all have to serve the overlord, right?
Yeah.
All the kings have to serve the high king. That's regardless of whether
They must
you
bend
said
the
it,
knee.
whether you said it or not, by dint of being a king or a lord.
It seems to me like that these men did bend the knee. They did swear an oath.
Yeah, okay. But they're similar to the evilish northern buried men in that they're in this suspension where they are not dead. They haven't passed on.
Right.
There's also a weird, getting back to our first item, the religion or magic or whatever. Like, how does the king perform this task of binding the spirits of men to the path of the dead until they're? That's a very It's a vague procedure.
Right. Like,
And-
how did the curse actually play out?
And also,
How's this
they're
possible?
literally in an underground passage, right? I picture it like that they're lined up on both sides of this long tunnel, and that Aragorn and like Legolas, Gimli, and them, they all go from Rohan to the Paths of the Dead, and they all go through it, right?
Yes. They all go through it.
And it's underground.
Including
it's underground.
The Dúnedain also
Is it
go.
It's underground, right?
They pass through, like, yeah, they do go under.
Is it just
underground.
a really deep narrow valley.
Or is it like a cave, or is it like a crawl through where there's a valley and
Yeah,
there's become overdone?
Either way, this is loaded with sort of like symbolism, right? You know, like the descent into the underworld to free up.
Yeah,
these,
literally under the world.
it's like
underground.
unchaining these chthonic forces so that they can fight on the surface, that they're obligated to fight on the surface. And there's a lot to be said about the going underground thing too, like that we don't need to get into, but like Gimli feels weird about it, even though he should feel good about it. He's frustrated that Legolas goes in before him, maybe.
Yeah, that's a sense of pride for him.
Yep, and it's just a very scary confrontation with death. Everyone thinks that they're not going to make it, right? Not everyone.
They're kind of.
Just Theoden say, like, if you go, you're probably not going to survive.
I guess so. There's something like that. They're like, well, it's sort of like if you're in a playoff game, like sports, like if you lose, you're out.
Yeah.
But like, so you're playing a zone defense and the other team keeps scoring. Like, you got to change something, because if you continue to do what you're doing, you're definitely going to lose. If you go run a man defense, which you've never run, a person-to-person defense, you're probably not very good at it, but I mean, you might lose doing it, but you're for sure going to lose the other way.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta try something.
Plus, Aragorn maybe has some sort of prophetic knowledge that he has to do that. Sometimes Aragorn behaves in ways that, like,
wasn't it said somewhere?
well, Gandalf is, again, in this metaphor you've got, is the coach. Gandalf's like, you gotta go to man on man, and you'll be fine. And Aragorn's like, I trust you, Gandalf. You know more about this age than me,
Right.
and the obligations of like Númenorian.
But I think
kings.
Gandalf's being like, keep doing zone, it's not going to work.
You think? Yeah, sure.
And
He said
there
it
is
way.
that,
Yeah, I think Aragorn's known the whole time he has to do it, right? It's
Yeah.
not like he figures it out when he gets to Rohan. All right, I'm gonna go for the Foster, and you're gonna go for the actual text that we're talking about,
yeah,
right?
but there's no chapter called Paths of the Dead.
I know we're gonna have to
which
find
is
it. We'll get a citation from Foster.
Great.
All right.
Give me that one.
All right, Paths of the Dead. Without rereading the whole book, we've looked at the fandom, and we've looked at Foster, and we've located and read parts of 2 different sections in The Return of the King, where the Paths of the Dead are mentioned. Although I suspect from a citation in Foster that they're mentioned in the 2 Towers too, but I don't want to look for it. According to Foster, it's a road under the arid Nimrais, leading from the Dead Door above Dunharrow to the source of the Morthond near Erect. The Paths of the Dead were closed to all save the dead who lived there, and the heir of Isildur. So he can get in,
Right.
and the dead are there.
Yep.
And they're there, so it must be probably in the 2 Towers where they explain what their obligation is, because I didn't see it anywhere else. Did you?
Explain what's going on with the Paths of the Dead.
Well, why their dead are living there, and why they're obliged to help Aragorn.
Oh, you want that part, huh?
If you got it, sure. And while you're getting it,
So this is where Legolas and Gimli are joining them on the Paths of the Dead, passing the Great Company. Blah blah blah. That we shall know if we come to Eric, said Aragorn. But the oath that they broke was to fight against Sauron, and they must fight thereafter if they are to fulfill it. For at the Eric there stands yet a black stone that was brought, it was said, from Númenor by Isildur, and it was set upon a hill, and upon it the king of the mountains swore allegiance to him in the beginning of the realm of Gondor. #colonialism. But when Sauron returned, they grew in might again. Isildur summoned the men of the mountains to fulfill their oath, and they would not, for they had worshipped Sauron in the dark years. Then Isildur said to their king, Thou shalt be the last king, and if the west prove mightier than thy black master, this curse I lay upon thee and thy folk, to rest never until your oath is fulfilled. For this war will last through the years uncounted, and you shall be summoned once again ere the end. And they fled before the wrath of Isildur, and did not dare to go forth to war on Sauron's part. And they hid themselves in secret places in the mountains, and had no dealings with other men, but slowly dwindled in the barren hills, and the terror of the sleepless dead lies about the hills of Erech, and all places that the people lingered. But that way I must go, since there are none living to help me. And then they go.
Mm-hmm. And from the physical description, it sounds like it's a deep, deep valley, deep into the glen, and there stood a sheer wall of rock, and in the wall the dark door. So is it a cave or not?
They do go underground. There's an underground path.
In the wall the dark door gaped before them like the mouth of night. Signs and figures were carved above its wide arch, too dim to read, and fear floated like a gray vapor. Halbarad says it's an evil door. None of the horses will go in, and Aragorn says we got to go in.
Yeah, he's like, there's no other way. It's my duty. We must. And his strength alone, like the men, like through his strength, the men followed and the horses followed.
They have torches with them. And then it sounds like Gimli's perception is that as they ride, more and more ghastly, like semi-unseen figures fall in behind them.
Yep. I just had that part.
And then they get into a great empty space. And then they come to the king, right?
Yes, so like at one point, Gimli looked back, and the dwarf saw before his eyes the face and glitter of the elves' bright eyes. So he's behind them rode blah blah blah, but not behind them rode Elladan, last of the company, but not the last of those who took the downward road. The dead are following, said Legolas. I see shapes of men and of horses, and pale banners like shreds of cloud, and spears like winter thickets on a misty night. The dead are following.
Mm-hmm. When Aragorn gets up into the big open space and approaches, I guess, the king of the dead, he says this enigmatic stuff. Hither shall the flowers of Simbelmani come never unto world's end. 9 mounds and 7 there are now green with grass. And through all the long years he has lain at the door that he could not unlock. Whither does it lead? Why would he pass? None shall ever know, for that is not my errand. And then he turns back, and he says, I summon you to the stone of Erech. Keep your hoards and your secrets hidden in the accursed years. Speed only we ask. Let us pass and then come. I summon you to the stone of Erech. I don't know what any of that stuff about the mounds, green with grass, 7 and 9. I don't know what any of that means. Do you?
Well, we'll never find out either, because that's not his task.
Yeah, right. I know.
So like, there's more stuff going on, and he's like, yeah, we need speed right now. Shadowfax, we love Shadowfax because he's fast, not because anything else. We like the fastness. So like, Aragorn's saying, yeah, you got shit going on. Like, we're looking for speed right now. Get to the place. I summon you. We're gonna do the oath thing. Let's go.
You don't know what any of the mounds mean. Or
don't need to.
Okay, sure, yeah.
And Aragorn's like, don't need to do it. We got war. If we don't do it, we're all dead. I don't care.
Fun moment for Aragorn where he's like, I know all kinds of stuff, but we're focusing on one thing right now.
Right.
You know, I've been around the block. Okay, well, did you picture them as lined up like that? They're like, are they? It says they keep saying that they're living there. That the dead are like that they're living there. They can't get out.
I mean,
they're trapped
living
underground.
dead, like the living dead. They are there.
Yeah, like in houses and stuff with families.
No, these are just the men,
All
the
men,
Oathbreakers.
just all men.
Yeah, it's just like some brotherhood, some fraternity, some
Living underground.
Yeah, but are they really living because they're dead?
No, but yeah, I don't know what they're doing down there.
They're like undead.
You know, back to Fraggle Rock. It's a little Fraggle Rocky. There's this thing going on underground, and if you get down there, there's big chambers and there's narrow chambers, and there's all kinds of politics down there.
Sure. And in the, like, maybe I'm biased from the movies where they were portrayed as sort of these ghostly green spirits.
Oh, see, I haven't seen that movie, so I don't know what it looks like. Yeah. As I said at the beginning, I've never really understood this scene and this part, and it's like it just sits. I don't know if it's because it's uncomfortable or whatever. It just doesn't seem to sit in my imagination the way that other stuff in this book does.
When do they like fulfill their oath?
I don't know. You mean like when do they be dead? When do they get to be dead?
When do they get to be dead? Because I'm pretty sure the movie is different from the movie in the book.
I don't know. There is another scene where they're featured.
And that scene was
In the last debate, Gimli and maybe Aragorn gives an account. Maybe just Aragorn and it's Aragorn and Gimli. Sorry,
you have that.
Legolas and Gimli give an account.
That section?
Yeah, I do. It's long. Pippin. So Pippin says, "The sun is shining here, and we are all together for a day or two at least. I want to hear more about you all." This is the last debate chapter. "Come, Gimli, you and Legolas have mentioned your strange journey with Strider about a dozen times already this morning, but you haven't told me anything about it." "The sun may shine here," said Gimli, "but there are memories of that road that I do not wish to recall out of the darkness. Had I known what was before me, I think that not for any friendship would I have taken the paths of the dead." "The paths of the dead," said Pippin. "I heard Aragorn say that, and I wondered what he could mean. Won't you tell us some more?" "Not willingly," said Gimli, "for upon that road I was put to shame." This is this whole thing where he gets sad. "Gimli Glow-in-Sun, who was deemed himself more tough than men and hardier under earth than any elf, but neither did I prove, and I was held to the road only by the will of Aragorn, and by the love of him also." I'm not going to read this whole thing, man. Okay, so then Legolas takes over, and swiftly then, this is Legolas, he told of the haunted road under the mountains, and the dark tryst at Erech, and the great ride thence, 90 leagues and 3, to Pelargir on Anduin. Pelargir? 4 days and nights, and on into the 5th we rode from the Black Stone, he said, and lo, in the darkness of Mordor my hopes rose, for in that gloom the shadow host seemed to grow stronger and more terrible to look upon. Some I saw riding, some striding, yet all moving with the same great speed. So again, yeah, like you said, that emphasis on speed. Silent they were, but there was a gleam in their eyes. In the uplands of Lamedon they overtook our horses and swept around us, and would have passed us by if Aragorn had not forbidden them. At his command they fell back. Even the shades of men are obedient to his will, I thought. They may serve his needs yet. We don't need to do the whole thing, right? They are the reason that the Corsairs are defeated.
The reason the Corsairs are defeated. Because hear now the words of the heir of Isildur, your oath is fulfilled. Go back and trouble not the valleys ever again. Depart and be at rest. So that's Aragorn being like, yep, we're done. And the king came up and broke his spear, and then they all went away. So who does... So I think they just like march out and destroy the Corsairs down there. Oh, and then like the slaves, the oars are now wielded by free men, and manfully they labored, yet slowly we passed up the great river. So they're the people who are there bringing to Minas Tirith in that battle. The dead did not come with them.
Yeah, they're dismissed after the fight at sea.
The dead come from the paths of the dead to the harbor and destroy the Corsairs.
Mm-hmm.
Make them flee. To kill them, make them flee. It's not like the movies where the dead go to the fields of Pelennor.
Oh, is that what happens in the movies?
It does.
That
is they are the saving grace, and that's not true.
Well, there's the battle at they go to Pelennor Fields during the siege or whatever?
In the film adaptation.
Oh, okay.
That's the Deus Ex Machina. They're the saviors. But here they're not. It's the slaves, the enslaved people who are then freed. Help them. There's got to be someone else, though. I feel like there's more.
Well, the Rohirrim ride in.
The Rohirrim are there. But like even that, it could be like the lack of hope, like the orcs are seeing the Corsairs being like, haha, reinforcements. Oh, just kidding.
Well, also,
no.
like, the Lord of the Nazgul is killed at that battle, too.
Right.
I thought that was what turned the Horde.
Yep. It's that. It's also the Rohirrim get more like a spirit boost by... They're like, oh no, the Corsairs, we're doomed. And then, oh, it's not the Corsairs. They're on our side. Mm-hmm. Great. And then they get a boon from that.
Word. Okay. Number 0. Sam Gamgee.
Number 0.
Sam Gamgee, right?
Sam has been called the unsung hero, has been called the real hero. He deserves a mention, you know?
Sure.
He's throughout the whole thing, so he's not miscellaneous. He is core. But he's not like main. He's not like the main focus. He's not like the forerunner in any section, but he's necessary.
Yeah, sometimes I'm inclined to think that we need to think about Frodo and Sam psychologically as being two aspects of the hero.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's sound thinking, sound literary analysis, or sound psychoanalysis.
I mean, Frodo wouldn't be a hero without Sam. Sam wouldn't be a hero without Frodo.
Sam would not have gone on the I almost called it a vacation. Sam would not have gone on the adventure were it not for Frodo.
Right.
And Frodo would not have survived the adventure.
Right. They are inherently linked.
And they also would not have succeeded if it wasn't for Gollum.
Right.
There's almost an element where they're a three-person, they're a trinity
Yep.
of forces. So what distinguishes Sam from Frodo? Lots of things.
I mean, so Sam's described early on as sort of like he's a little chubby, he's a little slower, he's not smart. These are virtues he doesn't have, but he's like fiercely loyal. He's described like he's compared to a dog in like early on. Mm-hmm. Sort of like Gandalf chooses him as a companion, almost like it's a conscious choice, but it's sort of like a no-brainer. Like you wouldn't be able to escape it.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that he's not smart.
He's described as like he's not book smart.
Exactly right. That's exactly.
Oh
the thing.
no, Mr. Frodo, I don't know about any of that.
Right. And yet, again, it's sociopolitical. But I do want to say it. Sam's family is maybe tending the entire. What's it called? His house. It's called Bag End.
Yeah, Bag End.
Bag End is maybe.
Like
this is
Bagshot
maybe
Row.
like a. Yeah, this is maybe like a British nobility situation where there are domestic servants who have lived on the land for generations.
Upstairs, downstairs.
Yeah.
Sam is up downstairs.
Yeah, so Sam has an intimate knowledge of how to garden. He's mainly a gardener, right?
Which seems to have like that link to Bombadil.
Mm-hmm.
And another link with Bombadil is Sam bears the ring for a while. And then Frodo's like, give it back, and Sam has no problem.
Yeah,
like not even a hint of hesitation.
He is affected by the ring.
He's affected like a little bit, but he's like, here you go. If he hesitates, it's like, are you sure? Like I know it's gonna hurt you.
Right.
It's not through any selfish means. It's
Sure.
like this completely selfless thing.
Yeah, it's funny that the ring bearer is so susceptible to that when other characters. I mean, maybe that's by dint of having carried the ring around for a while.
Right.
Gollum and Frodo both. They're burdened by the ring, but also they want to carry the ring.
Yeah. Sort of like it has a chemical that's like slowly seeping into you.
And Sam is less affected because he hasn't. But Sam has the ring on for kind of a long time. He wears it for quite a while.
He wears it. Yeah, he wears it some. Like it's a long duration, and it's in
Mordor.
Like,
yeah. Okay, so he's not the intellectual, but he has a higher wisdom score. He doesn't have a lower intelligence score, but a higher wisdom score. Here's another difference: is Frodo is a bachelor, and Sam is a family man. To the end, right? Frodo never gets married,
right?
And Sam's already getting ready to get married when he gets whisked away on the. Right,
Yes,
like He and Rosie are already in love.
Rosie,
Yeah. Yep, and Frodo has nothing like that going on.
There's also this like
Sam
there's
loves.
there's this great love between Frodo and Sam.
Sure, that's not a contrast, but yeah, there's a great love between them. I was going to say Sam loves food.
Oh,
Is Frodo disinterested in food, more or less?
I mean, he likes it as any hobbit likes it.
Yeah, but Sam likes food so much that he brought
His cooking
spices.
Yeah, it's got a little bit of salt, a little taste of the Shire with him.
Yep.
And he hated to leave his cooking ware, which he carried through like the entire journey into Mordor, And then it's like, well, we got to get rid of stuff. And he's like, fine. He's very reluctant to get rid of his pots and
That's
pans.
his sacrifice going into Mordor, right? Is his cooking stuff. Did they leave it outside Mordor?
Yeah, he brings it in to some point, and I think I don't remember when.
I know he loses it. It could be his whatever. I don't want to speculate.
I think it's at one. I think he carries it like the whole way through Cirith Ungol and through that fight or whatever, and then he's like, "Well, we got to scrap something. Yeah, I guess we're not going to cook again." I think it's after that, after they escape the tower, that he gets rid of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But we can anyone can check.
Yeah, anyone can check.
The point is, he was reluctant, and he
Yeah.
carried it a long way.
Okay. Are there other big contrasts?
Between Sam and Frodo?
and another big contrast is that Frodo goes to the Grey Havens and doesn't come back.
Yeah.
And Sam comes back.
Sam
says, "I'm
Sam
home."
takes him. Yeah, Sam takes. So that's the ending. So Sam takes. He's like the escort. Says goodbye. It is the last line of the story. He embraces Rose. Little Eleanor becomes on his lap. Family man. He drew a deep breath. Well, I'm back, he said.
Yeah.
And that's it. Story ends. Which is like this beautiful storytelling thing of like the book is this. I'm just imagining like if you read this book to someone and you're like all gathered around telling a story. Well, I'm back. Like, and he's like, well, I'm back. And then you get to come back to the waking world. You get to story's over.
And back again.
Yeah. Now you're back and now more things.
Yeah. And that it feels like a good place to end on Sam, but is there nothing else you want to say about Sam? It's funny that there's not much to say maybe about Sam.
I mean, he's hyper aware of, he's always got his eye on Frodo. He's hyper aware of Frodo, where the rest of the fellowship's going, oh, this stuff, blah, 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 blah. And Sam's like, yeah. Like, Sam's not worried about the larger themes, not necessarily.
Yeah, no, he's always just concerned about Frodo being
he's like
physically
the guardian. Again, this is like the loyalty,
The dog.
sort of like the dog aspect. The Watcher in the Water grabs Frodo, and Sam's like immediately on it. Sam's protecting him from Gollum. Sam's always watching.
Yeah.
It's like this this like ultimate
He's a
friendship.
sidekick. That's a sidekick role, yeah?
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know
But it's
enough
not
about-
real. It's not like a Robin to a Batman.
That's what I was going to say.
It's not. It's
I don't know
so
a
much
lot of-
better. It's so much more and more like more depth, heavier, more intense.
And one thing that always comes up in the sidekick story is always like some episodes deep, the sidekick has some sort of like reaction where they're like, I don't want to be
Yeah,
the
I should be
sub.
first one.
Yeah, I should be
Nah,
number
shouldn't
one.
be number two.
Right.
Rah.
And I'm not getting the respect, and that never happens to Sam. As far as I can tell, maybe a little bit with Gollum.
There's that meta moment where they're walking through the woods and they're like, I wonder what story we'll be in, or if this is one of those stories. And then Frodo's like, I want to hear more about Samwise the Brave. Frodo wouldn't have gotten very far without Sam. And he's like, oh, don't make fun. But like, there's that. But it wasn't fun. It was genuine.
Yeah, Frodo wants Sam to get a little spotlight.
Yeah,
And Sam's like, no, this is your story.
kinda.
Even though Sam does take us home, he brings us back.
That's interesting. The whole story, like Sam gets the last words. Sam brings us back.
You think we're done?
Yeah.